Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India NewsHour, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next hour. Prime Minister Modi condemns strikes on Qatar energy infrastructure during talks with Amir Al Thani, stresses on safe and free navigation, also speaks with leaders of France, Jordan, Oman and Malaysia. Prices for oil, fuel cargoes smashed record highs as Iran war chokes West Asia supply. US mulls removing sanction on Iranian oil stranded in tankers. Europe and Japan ready to join efforts to secure Strait of Hormuz. Iran strikes Jerusalem after Netanyahu declared the Islamic Republic decimated by war, says Iran no longer has uranium enrichment capacity or produce ballistic missiles after 20 days of US-Israeli air attacks. Hungary's constant refusal to accept EU's €90 billion loan to Ukraine angers European leaders. EU chief von der Leyen says will deliver Ukraine loan one way or another. And Tanvi Sharma, Ishrani Barwa and Malvika Bansor storm into the women's singles quarterfinals of Orleans Masters. Arjun and Hariharan enter men's doubles last 8. As the United States-Israel war on Iran entered its 21st day on Friday, hostilities intensified across multiple fronts with sustained missile exchanges, regional spillover and growing concerns over energy security. The Israeli military said it launched a wave of strike on Tehran early on Friday following Iranian missile fire at Israel overnight. A military statement said Israeli forces had begun a wave of strikes targeting infrastructure of the Iranian terror regime across Tehran. Israeli media said shrapnel hit the northern city of Haifa and an educational institution in its suburbs, causing damage but no casualties. Meanwhile, Iran launched multiple rounds of missiles towards Israel late Thursday after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared the Islamic Republic has been decimated by war. Iran responded to an Israeli attack on a major gas field by hitting Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city, causing damage that will take years to repair. Iran has warned it will show no restraint if its energy infrastructure is hit again after Israel attacked its South Par site on Wednesday. An Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel and the United States were winning the war against Iran and the Islamic Republic decimated, and it is unclear who is in charge. In an English language press conference, Netanyahu said Tehran no longer has the capacity to enrich uranium or manufacture ballistic missiles and indicated his campaign against Iran would continue, saying there's still more work to do and we are going to do it. Netanyahu also said that attempts to close the strategic Strait of Hormuz would fail.
We are acting now, not only to destroy the ballistic missiles and the remaining nuclear programs, very little remains, but also to destroy the industries that enable the production of these programs. And already now, after 20 days, I can tell you Iran today has no ability to enrich uranium and it has no ability to produce ballistic missiles. We are continuing to dismantle these capabilities. We will crush them completely down to dust.
Netanyahu further insisted Israel had acted alone in striking Iran's massive South Pars gas field, while confirming that US President Donald Trump had asked Israeli forces to hold off on such attacks moving forward. Netanyahu also rejected the notion that he had dragged Trump into the conflict, implying that he was the junior partner in the joint assault on Iran.
Well, I'll say two things. Fact number one, Israel acted alone against the Slawia gas compound. Fact number two, President Trump asked us to hold off on future attacks, and we're holding out. And I want to close these opening remarks with one other fake news, and that is that Israel somehow dragged the U.S. into a conflict with Iran. Does anyone really think that someone can tell President Trump what to do? Come on.
And updates from the Gulf region now. Emirati and Kuwaiti air defenses were responding to missile attacks early on Friday. In a statement, Kuwait's military said air defenses are confronting hostile missile and drone attacks. The UAE's National Emergency Crisis and Disaster Management Authority has warned people to remain in a safe location as air defense systems are currently responding to the threat of a missile attack. Elsewhere in the Gulf, Bahrain's Interior Ministry said air raid sirens were activated, and Saudi Arabia's Defense Ministry said it had intercepted a drone in the country's east. Saudi Arabia said a drone hit the country's Samref refinery in the port city of Yanbu on Thursday. The Saudi Defense Ministry said damage assessment was underway. Oil loadings by Saudi Arabia at the Red Sea port of Yanbu were disrupted briefly. The port is the only export outlet for the world's largest oil exporter after Iran effectively blocked tanker traffic leaving the Gulf via the Strait of Hormuz. The strike comes after drones hit two oil refineries in Kuwait. Overnight Iranian attacks also hit natural gas sites in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Kuwait Petroleum Corps' Mina Al Ahmadi and Mina Abdullah refineries were targeted by drones on Thursday, resulting in fires at both sites. The UAE shut its Habshan gas facilities after intercepting missile early in the day. Abu Dhabi media office said no injuries were reported. Now, prices for oil fuel cargoes smashed record highs as West Asia supply continued to remain choked on the 21st day of the Iran war. Surging oil prices in physical markets, the trading place for oil on ships, rail cars or in storage tanks have outpaced the already dizzying increases in benchmark futures markets as refiners and traders across Asia and Europe are snapping up whatever barrels they can secure to plug the enormous supply gap. That supply gap is expected to persist following a barrage of attacks on oil and gas facilities across the Middle East that has turned into the largest ever disruption to global energy supplies. And amidst the concerning situation, the U.S. seems to be mulling over taking a U-turn, with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent hinting at removing sanctions on Iranian oil stranded on tankers at sea soon. Bessent said, and I quote him, "In the coming days, we may unsanction the Iranian oil that's on the water. It's about 140 million barrels. He said the release of the sanctioned Iranian oil into global supplies would help keep oil prices down for the next 10 to 14 days. Oil prices have been above $100 per barrel for much of the past 2 weeks as Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz to shipping and has attacked tankers. The Treasury recently took a similar step to temporarily allow the sale of sanctioned Russian oil stranded on tankers, which Bessent said added around 130 million barrels to global supplies. And United Arab Emirates President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and US President Donald Trump discussed regional developments and their impact on global peace during a phone call. According to UAE's state-run WAM news agency, the two leaders also reviewed what were described as blatant and continuous Iranian aggressions against the United Arab Emirates and other countries in the region, which target civilians, civilian facilities and infrastructure, representing a violation of sovereignty of these countries and international laws. US President Trump condemned the attacks and reaffirmed the United States' solidarity with the UAE and the countries of the region and its full support for them in defending their territory's stability and security. Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a telephonic conversation with Amir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, to exchange warm Eid greetings and discuss regional security concerns. The Prime Minister spoke with the Amir of Qatar and conveyed heartfelt Eid greetings to him and the people of Qatar. During the discussion, the Prime Minister reiterated India's solidarity with Qatar and expressed strong condemnation of the attacks on the region's energy infrastructure. PM Modi further expressed his gratitude for the care and support provided to the Indian community in Qatar and shared his hope for peace and stability to prevail in the region. Both the leaders affirmed their shared stance for safe and free navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. Earlier, Prime Minister Modi spoke to leaders from Jordan, Oman, Malaysia and France on Thursday and expressed concern over the evolving situation in West Asia. He condemned attacks on energy infrastructure, urging de-escalation through dialogue and diplomacy for peace and stability. PM Modi also stressed safe and free navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. All right, DD India's Akshay Dongre joins us on the phone line for more. Akshay, the conflict has now entered its 21st day with intensifying strikes on both sides. What's the latest, especially from Tehran and Israeli cities like Haifa?
Well, Abhishek, as far as the latest is concerned, we are getting information that a fresh barrage of missiles have been launched from Israel into Iran. Now we also are seeing reports that an Iraqi armed group, Saraya Awliya Al-Dam, has claimed responsibility for a series of attacks targeting U.S. military facilities in Iraq. So the situation is evolving. Israel says that striking. Israel has also said that it is striking Iranian regime infrastructure in Tehran, and this is happening in a fresh wave of strikes against the infrastructure of the government of Iran. So the situation continues to escalate with each and every passing hour, and the situation getting more and more complicated, with the targets now getting moving from the infrastructure to energy infrastructure, which remains far more difficult as well as far more dangerous when it comes to containing the sort of violence that is erupting now in the region. So we'll have to wait and watch that how the situation de-escalates. But as of now, there are no signs coming in of that. In fact, both the sides, both the warring factions here, continuously are trying to inflict as much as damage possible on the other side, and it all started with Israel striking the gas reservoirs of Iran, and then in return, Iran has resulted into massive attacks against the energy infrastructure of other Gulf countries like Qatar. This has wider ramifications, not just for the region, but for the energy supplies of the rest of the world, especially for countries that are reliant on these resources for their own fuel supplies. Countries like India that import majority of its oil and gas from these parts of the world, countries in South Asia, Southeast Asia, countries as far as Africa, and many of other countries around the world are dependent on these energy resources that are now the target of these warring factions. So it seems like the war has now entered into a mindless violence sphere, and this perhaps remains one of the most dangerous ones that is there in any kind of conflict, like we saw in Russia and Ukraine conflict as well. Striking each other's nuclear facilities or striking each other's energy facilities have always been a very complicated and very sensitive topic.
Yeah.
Which have resulted into sort of quid pro quo kind of attacks, and these can really plummet the region into a point of no return as far as their infrastructure is concerned.
Also, Akshay, talking about Strait of Hormuz, several countries, including Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Japan, they're stepping in to secure it. What kind of coordination are we seeing, and also more nations expected to join?
Well, it seems that as per the expectation of the US government, not as many countries are interested in getting their hands into the Strait of Hormuz. Firstly, it remains a very narrow corridor that is, surrounded by two different countries from two sides. It's very difficult to sort of secure it. It is very easy to strike from land into the Strait of Hormuz by identifying ships and targets. So there can never be any confidence in the countries who want to sail their tankers from there, except if they get assurances from Iran and all the other factions that there will be no attacks. But that remains a far-fetched reality from now. So yes, there are efforts that are being made, but how effective these efforts will be, that remains to be seen, because Strait of Hormuz is a wide area which can be utilized by Iran and other groups to strike against the countries that are sort of supporting the U.S. and Israeli military offensive against the Iranian government. So it's as of now very difficult that a lot of countries will be directly getting involved in this conflict, because that makes those countries also a legitimate target for the Iranian government.
All right, Akshay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your inputs. We are slipping into a very short break. On the other side, more stories. Keep watching DD India NewsHour. Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. The European Union, following a meeting of the bloc's leaders in Brussels, called for a moratorium on strikes against energy and water facilities. European leaders have demanded the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and a moratorium on strikes on water and energy infrastructure in the West Asia as they met in Brussels. All heads of the 27 European Union nations issued a joint statement on Thursday calling for the stabilization of energy shipments and de-escalation and maximum restraint from warring parties. The leaders also asked Iran to stop striking neighbors across the Persian Gulf, sought international cooperation to prevent any large-scale refugee crisis in West Asia. And Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said she hopes for a positive outcome from negotiations over Greenland, but added that US President Donald Trump's interest in taking over the territory still remains.
Negotiations are currently underway. I naturally hope for a positive outcome, but it will, of course, have to be an outcome that remains within the red line set by the Kingdom of Denmark, jointly established by Greenland and Denmark. I hope for an agreement, but I believe, as I have said on other occasions, that US President's desire to take over Greenland is unfortunately still intact.
And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged the United States and Israel to end the war with Iran, warning the conflict risks spiraling out of control with severe consequences for civilians and the global economy.
First, to the United States and to Israel. It's high time to end this war that is risking to get completely out of control, causing immense suffering on civilians, and with the propagation around the global economy that is really dramatic, with potential tragic consequences.
And EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas called for urgent support to Ukraine at the Brussels summit as Hungary's Viktor Orbán continues to block a key €90 billion funding package amid disputes with Kiev.
Ukraine we will discuss today, and the big question in the room is the support loan. How can we proceed with the support loan that was agreed already in December by the leaders, and it's really time to show our support to Ukraine, because the war in the Middle East is connected to the war in Ukraine, and unfortunately Russia is gaining from the war in the Middle East.
While in Washington, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said Japan is ready to assist in U.S. effort to bring peace and prosperity to the world. After holding talks with U.S. President Trump, the two leaders said they have agreed to communicate closely to ensure vessels can safely transit the Strait of Hormuz. Trump, on his part, praised the US-Japan relationship and highlighted a recent trade agreement, saying it would expand cooperation in areas including energy, semiconductors and defense.
On my visit to Tokyo last year, we reached a historic trade deal that will increase our cooperation on everything from energy to semiconductors and shipbuilding and pharmaceuticals. It was a big one of the biggest deals ever made. The United States is also encouraged to see the steps the Prime Minister is taking to expand her country's commitment to its own security and defense and buying a lot of our defense equipment, I'm happy to tell you.
And governments across the world are rolling out measures to shield consumers from soaring energy costs triggered by the ongoing conflict in West Asia. From tax cuts to subsidies and supply adjustments, countries are scrambling to contain the economic impact. Germany is exploring relief measures, including a possible windfall tax on oil companies, while South Korea is boosting coal and nuclear power output and considering energy vouchers for vulnerable households. China has moved to ban refined fuel exports and is releasing fertilizer from reserves to stabilize domestic supply. Australia has urged citizens to avoid panic buying and is releasing fuel from domestic reserves, while Japan is seeking increased LNG supplies from Australia. The European Union has asked member states to be flexible on gas import rules to ensure timely deliveries. Italy has announced tax cuts on fuel, setting aside some 417.4 million euros, while Cambodia is increasing fuel imports from suppliers in Singapore and Malaysia to address shortages. Malaysia is raising subsidy spending to maintain stable fuel prices. And Thailand is considering oil tax cuts while also exploring crude imports from Russia. The Philippines is boosting coal-based power generation and regulating electricity tariffs, while Brazil has removed federal taxes on diesel. While Egypt has capped prices of unsubsidized bread and Ethiopia has increased fuel subsidies to ease the burden on consumers. These measures reflect a coordinated global effort to cushion economies and households from the ongoing energy shock. And the US-Israeli war on Iran and Tehran's attacks on Gulf neighbors have damaged major energy facilities and brought shipping through the Strait of Hormuz close to a halt. Let's take a look at key energy disruptions so far. So Iran halted natural gas flows to Iraq after diverting supply for domestic use. Israel has previously struck fuel depots across mainland Iran, while the United States hit its military targets at Kharg Island. Saudi Arabia reduced oil production by about 2 million barrels per day, bringing output down to around 8 million bpd after cutting activity at 2 offshore fields. The kingdom also suspended operations at its 550,000 bpd Ras Tanura refinery and rerouted some crude exports to the Red Sea. Kuwait had already cut oil output and declared force majeure. Qatar halted LNG operations and shipments, disrupting about 20% of global supply. Oil output by the UAE more than halved. ADNOC shut the 922,000 bpd Ruwais refinery, while the Fujairah export terminal came under repeated attacks. 15% of Middle East upstream production was lost, including offshore. The UAE-Iraq cut output from its main southern oil fields by 70% to about 1.3 million bpd from 4.3 million. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has nearly stopped since its closure on March 2nd. Asian refiners cut runs or declared force majeure amid shortages of feedstocks such as naphtha. The International Energy Agency recommended releasing 400 million barrels from global reserves. And the focus of EU leaders in Brussels was also on ensuring loan for Ukraine as conflict entered its fifth year this February. Despite Hungary's constant refusal to accept EU's €90 billion loan to Ukraine, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has given assurance will deliver Ukraine loan one way or another. The EU leaders agreed to the loan in December, but Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, who has cordial ties with Russia and has clashed with Ukrainian President Zelensky and blocked its implementation, citing a dispute over a conflict-damaged pipeline. Orbán's stance has angered other EU leaders as Kiev could run short of money in weeks if it does not receive new funding.
Let me turn to the 90 billion euro support loan for Ukraine. A decision was taken by the European Council in December, and there was one condition, the condition that 3 countries would not participate in the loan. That condition has been fulfilled. So let us be clear about where we stand. The loan remains blocked because one leader is not honouring his word. But let me reiterate what I already said in Kiev. We will deliver one way or the other.
While German Chancellor Friedrich Merz called plans by Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban to veto a vital 90 billion EU loan to Ukraine an act of gross disloyalty. Merz added EU leaders have asked the European Commission to find possible ways to pay out the promised loan to Ukraine despite Hungary's ongoing resistance.
I would like us to eventually return to a situation where we can rely on decisions once taken unanimously actually being upheld. This is a gross breach of the loyalty between member states and damages the European Union's ability to act and its reputation as a whole. In the meantime, we will try to support Ukraine with the resources we have.
Like other European leaders, French President Emmanuel Macron expressed discontent over Hungary's ongoing resistance to pay out a promised 90 billion euro loan to Ukraine. Macron said there is no plan B because plan A must be honoured.
We must not compromise on something that is without precedent. When heads of state and government agree on a decision, it must be honoured. Otherwise, it is in some way a collapse of the very meaning of our exchanges. So for me, there is no plan B, because plan A must be honoured. The credibility of the Council depends on it.
Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukrainian negotiators will meet officials from the United States on March 20th to restart talks. He lauded that the goal of the meeting is to move closer to a fair and respectful peace. Zelensky expressed that talks had slowed down earlier as attention have shifted to conflicts in West Asia.
Українська команда саме політична.
The Ukrainian team, specifically the political part of the negotiating group, is already on its way. We expect a meeting in the United States this Saturday. Today we discussed the negotiations in detail with Umarov, Kirilo Budanov and David Arakamia. Sergei Kislitsia will also participate in the meetings. Our priority is to do everything possible to achieve a dignified peace.
Для можливості достойного миру.
All right, still to come on this edition of DD India NewsHour. The Indian government says all refineries in the country are operating at high capacity and sufficient stocks of petrol and diesel being maintained. Indian carriers together will operate 34 scheduled and non-scheduled flights to and from West Asia region on Friday. And Chaitra Navratri festival being celebrated in Nepal with religious fervour and gaiety.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colourful culture.
Hello. Johar.
Johar. It fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout ho gaya.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic. Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Recap of our top stories.
Prime Minister Modi condemns strikes on Qatar energy infrastructure during talks with Amir Al Thani, stresses on safe and free navigation, also speaks with leaders of France, Jordan, Oman and Malaysia. Prices for oil, fuel, cargo smash record highs as Iran war chokes West Asia supply. US mulls removing sanctions on Iranian oil stranded in tankers. Europe and Japan ready to join efforts to secure Strait of Hormuz. Iran strikes Jerusalem after Netanyahu declared the Islamic Republic decimated by war, says Iran no longer has uranium enrichment capacity or produce ballistic missiles after 20 days of US-Israeli air attacks. Hungary's constant refusal to accept EU's €90 billion loan to Ukraine angers European leaders. EU chief von der Leyen says will deliver Ukraine loan one way or another. And Tanvi Sharma, Ishrani Barwa and Malvika Bansor storm into the women's singles quarterfinals of Orleans Masters. Arjun and Hariharan enter men's doubles last 8. The government on Thursday said that all refineries in the country are operating at high capacity with adequate crude inventories and sufficient stocks of petrol and diesel are being maintained. As part of the government's ongoing efforts to keep the media regularly informed about developments in West Asia, another interministerial briefing was held on Thursday. Joint Secretary at the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Sujata Sharma, said no cases of fuel dryouts have been reported at retail outlets and supplies of petrol and diesel continue to be maintained regularly. She added that in the past 2 weeks, around 125,000 new domestic, commercial and industrial connections have been issued in the last 2 weeks.
पिछले 2 हफ्ते में 1.25 लाख के आसपास नए घरेलू और कमर्शियल और इंडस्ट्रियल कनेक्शन दिए गए हैं। इसके अलावा पिछले 3 दिनों में लगभग और 5600 से ज़्यादा LPG कंज्यूमर्स PNG पर शिफ्ट भी हुए हैं।
Meanwhile, Special Secretary at the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, Rajesh Kumar Sinha, stated that in the Gulf region, no maritime incident has been reported in the past 24 hours. He added that the situation of 22 ships located west of the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf remains unchanged.
गल्फ रीजन में पिछले 24 घंटों में कोई भी समुद्री घटना की सूचना नहीं है। वर्तमान में जहाज़ों की स्थिति जो 22 की थी वेस्ट ऑफ स्टेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज पर्शियन गल्फ में, उसमें कोई बदलाव नहीं है। उसमें 611 भारतीय नाविक सवार हैं और सुरक्षित हैं। डीजी शिपिंग जहाज़ के मालिकों के साथ, जो उनकी एम्प्लॉयमेंट एजेंसी है, उनके साथ और रिस्पेक्टिव भारतीय मिशन के साथ समन्वय की स्थिति में लगातार निगरानी कर रहा है।
Providing further details, Rajesh Kumar Sinha also said that a Russian oil-laden tanker Aqua Titan is scheduled to arrive at New Mangalore port on March 21st. The vessel is carrying crude oil.
इस टैंकर का नाम एक्वा टाइटन है और इसकी चार्टरिंग की है MRPL ने, मैंगलोर रिफाइनरी एंड पेट्रोकेमिकल्स लिमिटेड, MRPL। और ये न्यू मैंगलोर पोर्ट पे इसका अराइवल डेट एक्सपेक्टेड है 21st of March, and this tanker will be carrying Urals crude oil.
And the External Affairs Ministry's fact-check unit has debunked claims on social media that India has sent warning to Iran amid rising tensions in the region. A clip has gone viral on social media in which Randhir Jaiswal, the official spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs, is heard saying during a press briefing that this reflects growing concerns over security, trade routes and geopolitical influence in West Asia. MEA has termed these claims as false and baseless. Also, a series of claims are being made on social media accounts that Russia is giving discounted oil to Pakistan and not to India. MEA termed it fake and said ask people to please stay alert against such false and baseless claims and posts on social media. and Indian Airlines are gradually restoring services to conflict-affected parts of West Asia. Air India and Air India Express will together operate 34 scheduled and non-scheduled flights to and from the West Asia region on Friday. Air India Express will continue to operate 6 scheduled flights to and from Muscat, including services Delhi, Kannur and Mumbai. In addition to the scheduled services, Air India and Air India Express will operate a total of 28 non-scheduled flights to and from the United Arab Emirates, subject to availability of slots and other prevailing conditions at the departure stations at the time. Moving on, India's blue economy is gaining momentum in Gujarat's Porbandar, which has emerged as a key fisheries hub. The region produces around 88,000 metric tons of fish annually, with exports reaching markets in Europe, Asia and the United States. The sector supports nearly 15,000 families, driving employment, exports and foreign exchange growth.
Porbandar in Gujarat has emerged as a major hub of India's blue economy. Every year, nearly 88,000 metric tons of fish are produced here. A large share of this catch is exported to markets in Europe, Asia and the United States. This not only generates valuable foreign exchange but also provides employment to thousands of families.
The production capacities of all the factories is strong, so we can further increase both the production and export of products, which will also lead to higher income generation.
This machine is very useful and helps us greatly in our work. We thank the government for providing it. Such schemes will be highly beneficial for us.
Vanana GIDC, located near Porbandar, is rapidly emerging as a major fish processing hub. Several units here are certified by the Marine Products Export Development Authority. Along with fish processing, fish waste is also utilized to produce fish meal and fish oil. After being brought in from the sea, the fish is taken to processing plants where it undergoes sorting, cleaning and laboratory testing. The fish is then frozen at -14 degrees Celsius, packaged and exported to international markets.
Speaking about the export market, fish from Porbandar is processed and supplied to countries such as Japan, Europe, the United States, China and Southeast Asia. Fish processing units are currently operating in Jawar and Vanana GIDC, and in the coming period, new fish processing units are also being established in Miani.
The fisheries industry provides employment to nearly 15,000 families in Porbandar. Clearly, this thriving sector is not only strengthening the local economy, but is also contributing significantly to India's blue economy and boosting the country's foreign exchange reserves.
And the traditional New Year festival of Sajibu Nongma Panba was celebrated across India's northeastern state of Manipur on Thursday, particularly among the Meitei community. People welcome spring season and mark the advent of the new year, reflecting the unity embedded in India's rich cultural diversity.
Imphal came alive with festive spirit on Thursday as the Meitei community celebrated Sajibu Nongma Panba Cherauba to mark its traditional new year. Observed on the first day of the Sajibu month in the Meitei lunar calendar, this festival celebrates new life and the arrival of spring. On this special day, community members once again came together for age-old rituals and meals with neighbors and relatives.
It's like a reawakening, and it's such a beautiful tradition for all of us where we share food with our neighbors, our family members, our relatives. So this thing of the community feeling has always been kept alive through Cherauba.
For the Meiteis, this festival is a time to relive their heritage and the spirit of togetherness across generations, keeping alive their identity with pride and hope.
And also being celebrated is the Hindu festival of Chaitra Navratri, one of the most significant festivals dedicated to the worship of Goddess Durga and her 9 divine incarnations beginning Thursday. In Nepal, devotees are visiting Shakti temple and offering prayers. People continue to throng Kuheshwari Shakti Peeth, Dakshin Kali and other Shakti temples in Kathmandu Valley. During Vatsaleshwari Yatra in Pashupati area on Thursday, chariot with goddess was being pulled by devotees who danced and sang to the tune of local music and playing of traditional instruments. And as Eid-ul-Fitr approaches, markets nationwide are alive with shoppers hunting for festive treats. Stores brim with sweets and specialty items, while every street corner echoes the joy and excitement of the upcoming celebrations.
Ahead of Eid-ul-Fitr, markets across the country are bustling with shoppers thronging to make special purchases for the festival. Shops are stacked with a variety of delicacies, and every street corner reflects the spirit of celebration. In Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir, the aroma of freshly baked delicacies has filled the streets as locals throng bakeries to buy festive treats for the occasion. Meanwhile, in Uttar Pradesh's Gorakhpur, shops selling a variety of the essential Eid delicacy, sevai, have lined the streets.
Banarsi sevai, Lachhedar sevai and Imami sevai are available. Imami sevai sells the most across India. This sevai is an essential part of Eid. Without it, Eid feels incomplete.
Eid-ul-Fitr, which marks the culmination of the holy month of Ramzan, will be celebrated in India either on March 20th or 21st, depending on the sighting of the crescent moon.
All right, still to come on this edition of DD India NewsHour. WTO warns the global trade growth is expected to slow down to 1.9% this year amid the West Asia crisis. Members of the Iranian women's national football team returns home, greeted with a welcome ceremony and flowers. And Washington's cherry trees at the tidal basin begin to show early signs of bloom, marking the approach of spring.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. Energy prices soared during a volatile session on Thursday, while Wall Street stocks trimmed losses in Micron Technology and Tesla, as rising oil prices fueled inflation concerns and dampened hopes for future interest rate cuts. Major Wall Street indices were headed to significant losses following gloomy sessions in Europe and Asia. The S&P 500 fell 0.3%, while the Nasdaq Composite declined 0.28%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 0.44% to close at 46,021.43. Brent crude pulled back after the US allowed sales of Russian oil, while European gas prices jumped sharply on supply concerns before easing. Tesla fell after regulators expanded an investigation into its full self-driving system over safety concerns, while Micron Technology dropped due to a disappointing forecast despite strong AI-driven gains this year. Nvidia also declined. Meanwhile, the European Central Bank kept its key interest rate at 2% on Thursday and warned that the war in Iran was clouding the outlook for growth and inflation in the Eurozone.
The Governing Council today decided to keep the three key ECB interest rates unchanged. We are determined to ensure that inflation stabilizes at our 2% target in the medium term. The war in the Middle East has made the outlook significantly more uncertain, creating upside risks for inflation and downside risk for economic growth. It will have a material impact on near-term inflation through higher energy prices. Its medium-term implications will depend both on the intensity and duration of the conflict and how the energy prices affect consumer prices in the economy.
And the bank said it is keeping its options open while monitoring the war's impact on inflation and growth, adding that the economy remains resilient and well positioned while closely watching energy and commodity prices for the effects on wages, consumer behavior and pricing. And the global trade growth is expected to slow down to 1.9% this year amid the West Asia crisis. World Trade Organization in a report on Thursday warned that the West Asia conflict could weigh heavily on already slowing global trade, potentially threatening global food security. The WTO's annual global trade outlook was released nearly 3 weeks into an escalating war in West Asia that is already causing soaring energy prices and reviving fears that a major economic crisis is looming. If energy prices remain high, the WTO forecasts that merchandise trade volumes could grow just 1.4% this year compared to 4.6% in 2025. It would also put pressure on food supplies and trade in services due to travel and transport disruptions.
Under a baseline forecast scenario, world merchandise trade volume growth would slow from a stronger than expected 4.6% in 2025 to a modest 1.9% in 2026, before rebounding to 2.6% in 2027. The recent rise in energy prices linked to the Middle East conflict could shave another 0.5 percentage points of merchandise trade volume growth this year, lowering it from 1.9 to 1.4%.
All right, sports updates now. We'll start with badminton. Several Indian shuttlers have entered the quarterfinal stage of the Orleans Masters 2026 after convincing wins in the round of 16. Tanvi Sharma secured a straight game win over compatriot Anmol Kharab to enter the last 8th stage. World Junior Championship silver medalist Tanvi Sharma raced to her 3rd win in 4 encounters against Anmol Kharab. Malvika Bansod followed Tanvi Sharma into the quarters after defeating Wong Ling Ching of Malaysia. Ishrani Barua also progressed to the women's singles quarters after a hard-fought win with Wen Yu Zhang of China. In men's doubles, Hariharan and M.R. Arjun secured a convincing victory over Scotland's Alexander Dunn and Adam Pringle. Members of the Iranian women's national football team returned home to the Bazargan border crossing with Turkey, completing a return journey from Australia. Australia had granted humanitarian visas to 6 players and 1 support staff member after they sought asylum, saying they feared possible persecution if they returned to Iran. The team flew into Istanbul on Tuesday, took a flight to Igdir in eastern Turkey on Wednesday. After a trip of around 2 hours to the frontier, they went through passport control at the Gurbulak border gate before crossing over into Iran. Members of Iran's team were greeted with a welcome ceremony upon their return. Players were handed bouquets of flowers and signed what appeared to be mini soccer balls. And FIFA President Gianni Infantino has emphasized the role of football and the 2026 World Cup as unifying force during a time of geopolitical turmoil. During FIFA's 35th Council meeting in Zurich, Infantino said the organization was committed to using the World Cup as an opportunity to build bridges. The 2026 World Cup begins on June 11 and will be hosted by the United States, Canada and Mexico. Iran have qualified for the tournament and are scheduled to play 2 group matches in Los Angeles and 1 in Seattle. However, that participation has been much debated in the wake of conflict in West Asia. Iran's Football Federation had opened talks with FIFA about potentially relocating its matches, but the global governing body have said they hope all teams play as per their original schedules.
It's indeed 84 days to go until the World Cup kicks off on the 11th of June. It's very soon. We, of course, all know about the geopolitical situation around the world. And we said it many times, FIFA or football can certainly not solve geopolitical conflicts around the world. What we can, however, do and what we will do is use football and use the World Cup to bring people together, to build bridges.
And FIFA President Infantino also said changes were coming to the women's game. Every team in a FIFA women's competition will be required to have at least 1 female head or assistant coach as part of sweeping new regulations from soccer's governing body aimed at boosting the number of women coaching at the highest levels.
As a matter of global policy, and this will now be enshrined in every single regulations of women's competitions for FIFA, and we hope that all confederations, member associations will take this policy as well on board. We expect and we request every national team, every team participating, that the head coach and or an assistant coach has to be a female, that one of the medical doctors has to be a female, that at least 2 officials who are on the bench at the moment of the match have to be female.
And New Zealand speedster Lockie Ferguson is set to miss the early stages of the upcoming Indian Premier League for Punjab Kings. Ferguson took a short paternity leave during the start of the T20 World Cup. After the event, Ferguson was part of the Kiwi squad for the first 2 T20Is of the 5-match series. Ahead of the third T20I, Ferguson shared that the recent arrival of his newborn son has shifted his priorities as he aims to be present at home while continuing to manage professional commitments. The right-arm fast bowler is expected to return to franchise duties for PBKS later in the IPL season. And Washington's cherry trees at the tidal basin are beginning to show early signs of bloom, marking the approach of spring at a site long associated with Japan and US friendship. The blossoms trace their origins to a 1912 gift from Japan of 3,020 cherry trees which were planted around the tidal basin, East Potomac Park and the Potomac River waterfront, becoming one of the US capital's most enduring symbols of diplomatic ties. And that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan from All First Air in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.